Welcome back to another Crypto Dave video. So today I'm doing the results video for our DCA with the liquidity pools experiment. So if you've been following the market, you'll know big pullback in the last few days. I did wait for a day or so because the bottom of our range was just over 70,000 to see if it was going to be a pullback to around 70,000, a little bounce. It doesn't look like that's the case. We've kind of gone through that 70,000 level now. I don't anticipate it bouncing back in the next kind of week or so. So I've now got some finalized figures. So let's have a look at what happened. So on the 6th of May, we put $10,000 into a CBBTC USDC pool. I will link in the description below and at the end of this video in the sort of like end credits, as it were, a link to the original kind of video. So if you haven't watched that, maybe go back and watch that first. It will explain exactly how we set this experiment up. But we put 10,000 into a pool, and the idea was, can you make more money from the fees within a liquidity pool, using it to kind of DCA as the price goes down? So by the 12th of May, we'd gone up to $57 we'd made. By the 26th of May, that was down to $18 profit, but we were probably about a third of the way into the kind of range. So Bitcoin had dropped probably from about a third, so we're down to that sort of $77,000 level. But because we'd been compounding the fees, we were still slightly in profit from our initial 10,000, and then we had that big pull down. And by the 2nd of June, when we essentially went down to the bottom range of our pool, we were down to $9,460, so a $540 loss on what we invested. And by this time, we're entirely in Bitcoin. We earned throughout the experiment between $4 and $8 a day in fees. I think there was one day where it was a little bit higher than that, maybe 1 or 2 days when it was slightly lower than that, but roughly $4 to $8 a day. So what were the results? So three ways of kind of looking at it. When we set up the experiment, this was our upper range, and this 70,604 was our lower range. If we bought at the top, instead of putting it into a liquidity pool, if we'd taken our $10,000 and bought Bitcoin, we'd have got 0.1219 Bitcoin. If we'd held the USDC and just bought when it hit the bottom of the range, we'd have got 0.1416 Bitcoin. And by DCAing through the pool whilst compounding the fees, we actually ended up with 0.1341 Bitcoin. So obviously better than just buying at the top of the range, worse than holding USDC and buying at the bottom of the range. But if we hadn't compounded the fees, if you look at this bottom figure here, with no fees accounted for, our price or our average cost basis would be 76,316. So we lowered our entry price by $1,800 because we compounded that fees. And as I said, the experiment ran for just a fraction under 4 weeks. So what are the conclusions? Essentially, it's generally better to hold USDC and buy lower if you have conviction that the market is going to go lower. I have conviction the market's going low. If you look at my other videos, you'll know where my kind of targets and stuff are. But roughly, if you are going to be buying Bitcoin, but you think we're not near the bottom of the market, hold your USDC, hold your stablecoins, whatever you're holding it in, and wait to buy lower. When can DCAing with liquidity pools work? So it could work if you're in range for a longer period, or indeed if the APY is larger. So within this experiment, I did a Bitcoin USDC pool. The percentages you're earning, the interest rate is lower on that than a more volatile asset like Ethereum USDC or Solana USDC. So if your APY was larger, it might work, and if you're in range for longer, it might work. Now in this example, we would have needed to be in range for approximately 3.5 months in total, so 2.5 months longer than we were, in order to bring our cost price down to the bottom of this 70,604. So after about 3.5 months, our entry price would have been this, and if we were still in range, we would have been continuing to earn fees, so we would have been better actually DCAing through a liquidity pool. But that's quite a long time for a relatively kind of short range in a bear market. And it can also work if you're hedging against the downside. So for example, if you've entered in the middle of a kind of range, and then what you can do is set a short position basically on a different platform to enter slightly lower than that. So if the price of Bitcoin in this example goes down, your short triggers and what you're losing in value within your liquidity pool is made up for by your short position. If the price goes up, your short position never kind of triggers, and you don't have to worry. You've got the fees and capital appreciation. I can do a video on hedging against LP pools if people are interested in that. But quite a simple video today. So we're at the end of the experiment, only 3 updates in total. As I said, I'll put a link below and a link at the end so you can go back and have a look at the first video. I did mention in the last one that if we bounced around for a while, if we came down to say 70,000, I might restart this with a lower range, so entering at sort of 70 with a view to going down to 60 or 50 or whatever. I don't think I'm going to do that because I think we're going to hit that kind of lower target sooner rather than later. I don't want to kind of like set up a pool and then be out of kind of range within a week or two. However, having said that, I think if we jump down to say test the low in February, which was around $60,000, I think if we go down to that kind of level and bounce around there for a little bit, I think what might be a reasonable entry, and I might do another experiment, is entering in the middle of a range, say at 60,000 with say 70,000 as the top of the range, 50,000 at the bottom of the range. Now I think we will go down to that kind of 50-ish thousand level, but I think that's potentially a pool that you could be in for certainly for a few months, 3 months, say till the end of the summer, beginning of the autumn. And potentially if you're willing to just drop out to the bottom range of that pool, maybe for a short time, it's one that you could hold for the longer term, certainly possibly to the end of the year, into next year, and wait for the price to bounce around within that, and then maybe go out eventually out the top of that range. So if we do that, maybe I'll set up another experiment doing that. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. If you can give me a thumbs up, that would be fantastic. Hopefully I will see you on the next video. I hope you're all doing well. Have a great day. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.